Alright, this is Gangbuster, the second issue of a miniseries introducing this outrageous new character. And I can't help but continue to enjoy this. It doesn't take itself seriously. It is not a comedy book, but there are bits that seem that way. It is either a writer and an artist just having fun, or it is a writer and an artist subtly taking the piss. It is hard to tell, but the reader isn't forced to endure their indulgence. This is actually fun. Our star is a mid-western gun-toting vigilante called Gangbuster, who shoots first and then doesn't ask any questions later. He is a goofy dude in a hockey mask and cargo pants with a shirt with a big dog on it. I am considering actually getting the shirt as a t-shirt. My only fear is it might be misconstrued as a political statement based on what DC destructively did with this character last year. I will not be talking about that in this video. I covered it in issue 1, and what they did was appalling. And I would cut away to a thumbnail of that other video now, but this is the current state of my laptop, so I cannot print screen anything. It wasn't that long ago, my video on issue 1. You shouldn't have any problem finding it. Issue 1 was a load of fun, and this one, it does lack a little bit of the spark of the debut, but there are a lot more things going on in this besides a man shooting terrorists. We have a subplot, a fairly stock subplot, with a pretty reporter lady who was saved by Gangbuster in issue 1. She is using her encounter with Gangbuster to try to further her career in media. And the thing about this Gangbuster series, at least the 2 issues I've read, is that there isn't really anything new here. But it does feel like its creators are going against the grain. This was 1987. It was the time when Watching Men and things like that were making writers ape the more mature model of comics. But this here is very art school and competent. It is paced a bit in line with stuff from the late 80s. But the ideas are quite traditional. It would be very easy to have this character be a dark and cynical character, but he's not. What this book reminds me of the most is actually the original Booster Gold series. That series had some slightly cheesy, slightly corny stuff, but it had a traditionally colourful title hero, and it was like the author of that, Stan Jurgensen, he was just doing the comic that he wanted to do, rather than trying to make it a comic that would be more popular. This is a straightforward comic book, and it is all the better for being so. Oh, here we go. A fantastic comparison. I have never read Slash Maraud, but based on this advert, this is like everything that Gangbuster isn't. Gangbuster, he can be seen as something in the mould of the times, similar to Punisher or any of the other anti-hero characters that were starting to gain popularity. But there is no edginess to Gangbuster. Slash Maraud, on the other hand, even just based on the title, Slash Maraud, this is what people would probably assume Gangbuster was like if they only ever heard the idea or they only saw a picture of him shooting an Uzi or whatever. One of our main plot lines is Gangbuster's secret identity. We don't know it. Well, I do, because he had an entry in Who's Who 87 update. But a lot of this is framing potential suspects, like this outspoken police officer, or a suburban dad, or this mechanic who is friends with the police guy, and they barely focus on because he is quite clearly who Gangbuster really is. In my first video on this series, I did talk about this character and his history, or rather his lack of use over the years, but I missed two important details. First is that he appears in a Captain Caveman series, a series written by that sad boy from My Chemical Romance. And it isn't a little jokey cameo. He seems to be full on a featured character, and that intrigues me. He is even on a bunch of the covers. I probably won't read that series though. I read the solicitation and it made me worried that it sounded like a Tom Queen mid-life crisis comic. He was also apparently on one of the CW TV shows, and he was popular with viewers. I didn't know out about that. I have not lasted more than a season watching any of them. But it is nice to know that this character was realised in another medium and supposedly successfully. They are giving advertisements to my subscribers now. Dr. Savage. He is not who you think he is. Thanks for the heads up, DC. So, is that one guy who comments on my videos, Dr. Savage? Is he really Michael Brian Benson incognito? What a twist. Suicide bombers at a school. And this is a bit where I did a lot of back and forth mentally about whether this is one big joke or not. This face here was a big cause for it. Something very, very funny about one student reacting to a bomb threat this way, while the rest of the students either look confused, irritated, or unfazed. I admit, it is odd to see a character like Gangbuster and not think of it politically. On the surface, he seems like a critique of gun culture and relaxed gun laws in certain states. But there is really virtually no overt political opinions being espoused in this series. We hear bits and pieces from both sides, but even with the title character using guns and killing terrorists, it surprisingly never presents his actions as anything besides action. Unlike The Punisher, we didn't have Gangbuster narrating it or explaining why he is doing it. We just have a guy show up and then save the day. But it is barely even glamorizing it. Like here, he gets shot. And to completely contradict my point that it doesn't glamorize things, here is a sequence that appears like that. But it has to be intentional comedy. This has to be a joke or commentary. We have all the students cheering for Gangbuster beating up the terrorists. It's so over the top and goofy and silly. This has to be a joke. And I suppose stuff like this can be inferred or interpreted wrongly. There are people who could see this, they could read this and not recognise any sarcasm in this and think that it's just saying Gangbuster is cool and guns are cool and vigilantism is cool. It is hard to really assess this issue or this series overall because I am unsure how much of it is meant to be laughed at or if there is a possibility this is totally serious. But based on the writer and the artist's opinions on what DC did with this character, it gives me some faith that they are not insane gun rights activists writing a promotional comic for the NRA. This is better than Slash Marauds, probably. And if it is what I perceive this comic to be, one of, let's do a fun comic here, and one of, let's do some intentional comedy that some people might misinterpret, then this issue is going to get 7 thumbs up.